All right, the recording has been started. Welcome everybody to the Sunday Night Roundtable. Tonight's topic is going to be led by Aaron. Aaron, why don't you introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background, and share with us what you're going to chat about tonight.
All right, great. So I'm one of the mentors for 2847, the megahertz this year. The previous couple of years, I was with team 8298, the Mighty Morphin Banana Slugs. And what I'm here to talk about today is basically starting advocacy and how to foster a more communal spirit within Minnesota. And it's not going to be something that's just going to happen overnight. I know this. I think everyone involved knows this. But realistically, we're going to start with just the, basic overview and how to start proceeding with things, not even talking policy, not talking anything along those lines just quite yet. So I'm going to use the presentation. I've kind of modified it from Worlds. I presented at Worlds over XRP implementation across the nation and how to advocate for that. So it's along those lines, just slightly modified. If you have questions, feel free to speak up. Let me know if you have questions. More than happy to answer them. As we go through, we're going to be looking at an actual example as we go through it, just so you can kind of get a feel for what is I'm looking at or what we do. All right, so our agenda basically is looking at targeted documents for political parties, researching legislative bodies, defining the head of certain committees, also looking at your own legislatures, researching CTE organizations and computer science organizations, and how to communicate with state-funded colleges. I included a documents folder here, so you can access any of the documents that we've made over the past 5 years, I think it's been, really. And you can just kind of get a feel for things. Now, I have the general, and we'll go through some of those documents. There's nothing really specific in there. It's, very team-oriented for stuff we've done. But you can get the feel for it and how to actually create your documents. And like I said, we'll go through actually writing an email to not a political leader, but somebody else, and what that all looks like and how to actually move forth. The ultimate goal, like I said, is that hopefully next September, October-ish, we can actually look at rolling out a more unified front, not only for FRC, but also with FTC. A lot of us have FTC teams that we're associated with, and it doesn't help everyone doing their own thing. Yes, it benefits us on the impact side to have, this is our bill, this is our bill, this is our bill. But realistically, most of those bills that an individual team does, really, they kind of don't make it anywhere. You really need to work on getting a consortium of teams to move forward with things. Okay, so here we go. So first thing you need to remember is when you're talking first, basically, one of the things that we always highlight is what all the skills you have. And remember, just because your team may be focused on engineering and building a bot and all those other things, you don't want to necessarily leave out the grand scope of what FIRST does. So, we teach 3D printing skills, block coding in Java and C and Python, advocacy, and business planning. And those are things that we often lose when we're, especially build season. I mean, all I think about is build, 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 build. I don't necessarily think about half these other advocacy pieces. So that's why we start to think about it on the off season. We can talk about 3D printed things, designing games, etc. And those are little XRP bots. If you're not familiar with XRP bots, they're phenomenal little toys. Again, my plug for XRP, I love them. But there's this little, you can even do Swerve Drive with XRP. You can 3D print the whole thing. It's kind of crazy, and code it. And for 50 to 100 bucks, you got everything you need to, have people learn how to code Swerve Drive, which is phenomenal. So, okay. The main thing, and this isn't necessarily fun at all, but is to research. You want to look at what your political representatives are involved in, your business representatives, anything you're doing when you're communicating with people outside of FIRST. You need to research what they're about. Look for their mission statements, what bills they've voted for in the past. The political parties, Republicans, Democrats, you talk to them in certain different ways. And I will tell you that if you go to a FIRST training, non-SASA training, but a legitimate FIRST training, and this is why one of the reasons why I'm kind of happy to do this now, because eventually we're going to roll out more FIRST type trainings on advocacy. They're going to tell you to not do the code switching as much. But code switching is very important when we start talking about political figures and how we actually talk to political figures. Keep in mind that certain political groups don't necessarily care about DEI at all. Others care more about DEI. Learn to know what your actually strong parts are of the program that you're trying to sell to that group and sell it. So one of the ways to do this is by creating targeted brochures. Now, we've created targeted brochures not only for the bill, our team, but also industry in general. And it's really creating these targeted pamphlets and this literature that helps you not only see really the benefits of what a team brings, your team brings, but also what FIRST brings to the overall society within Minnesota. So I'm just going to pull up some of them here so you can see them a little more in depth. Hopefully you can still see them here. So let's see here. I apologize. It was all done in Word, so it might be screwed up a little bit in presentation, but hopefully it's not too terrible here. We talk about our robotics organization. We mentioned both FIRST and VEX in most of our literature initially, mainly because if you have a legislature or somebody that knows VEX, you don't necessarily want to exclude them from the bill and think, oh, well, why are you leaving VEX out? I know which one my personal preference is, FIRST or VEX. I've got my viewpoints on that, but it's one of those things that we can't necessarily exclude them in the conversation because we don't want to limit what we actually are trying to sell. So we go through, what our robotics organization is, why robotics are important, and basically what our team consists of. Now, this is normally on one page. It just so happens that Google doesn't like Word documents sometimes. But realistically, in this one, this is our Democrat letter. And what we have right there is basically the only part that is specific to Democrats. Our robotic organization values diversity and inclusion among its members. The organization boasts 60% female participation rate, 42% LGBTQ, 41% free and reduced, promotes STEM education and awareness in local community and outreach events. Our Republican letter, I think this guy is it. Yeah. Basically, it's all the same up until the very end. And again, that's that one box that we change. And that one box, basically in this one, we talk about looking for the competitive edge in manufacturing within America. And so we're speaking to the things that are important to the political party at hand. And you can either take it very specifically, we did very specifically, but in Minnesota, honestly, the main difference between, as far as things like STEM education and education in general that we've seen, the main differences are you can easily sell Republicans to Republican legislatures to CTE education. So if you're like, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, you go down the rabbit hole of CTE education. Generally speaking, that's a very easy sell for most Republicans to get bored because it creates jobs. It's job growth. It's job opportunities. And the Democrat letters, you could just easily go with the whole more generic. I'll get to you 1 second, Scott. Generic, like this is, benefits education. So we can get this in the science classrooms, the any sort of classroom, math classroom, et cetera. So the general ed things. All right, go for it, Scott. You have a question.
What does CTE stand for?
Oh, career and technical education. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
So that's basically your shop classes. And it's a little odd because computer science doesn't necessarily fall into that realm. It falls more under the general ed as far as the overarching picture within schools, and it has a lot to do with how things are funded and things like that. So for the Republican letters, we definitely look at more of the Perkins Funding Acts, and how to actually get that idea that, hey, you know what, you can go to an FFA organization, the Future Farmers of America, your ag classes in the rural parts of the state, and you can get robotics in there, because most of your tractors are all robots at this point. So if we start thinking about it that way, all farmers are just basically run by robots, realistically. Yes, you have somebody behind the controls, but there's so much robotics in farming anymore that is an easy sell for them. All right. So we have the specific, like, this is our team letter, etc. We have both Republican and Democrat for that. And then once we actually start getting into the more industry specific things, and again, this one did not show up well at all. I'd suggest if you're going to download these, download them, open them in Word. It works a lot better than the whole Google Docs thing. But we have basically military first. The reason why we did military a couple of years ago was we were trying to actually get the DOD grants. So we were trying to sell ourselves to military representatives to try and actually start to pursue DOD grants, because DOD grants is an easy way of get funding, in theory, if you get everything lined up. So we had we made this actually for one of the air shows in South Dakota, where we figured military personnel would be. There we go. So, you know, why military mentors are important, real world applications. You know, we found this stock photo of a military individual with a robot. I don't know who that is even, but yeah. And so we just kind of went through it and we figured out the benefits of the military, why we care about military partnerships, etc. And we have that for three separate, we have it for ag, manufacturing, and then the military. I would suggest looking at industries around you, and try to create the general overview for what industries you have. If you have more food processing, if you have other specific industries, target that and make the brochures for that. And don't be afraid to share them. It's one of those things that the more we have out there that people can pull from, the easier it's going to be to really try and create a more unified front on this. And we all get to claim published documents that way. You know, if you publish them, there you go. So it helps with impact too. All right. And then the last type of thing we have is more the specific brochure for the actual bill, whatever it may be. This is our XRP bill that we're working on. We've kind of put a back burner on it. Right now, the state of Minnesota, the budget is kind of a mess, to put it nicely, if they actually manage to get through budget, which they will eventually. But it's one of those things that this one, I think we were looking at 4 million-ish, and we really didn't feel like there was the appetite in the current legislature to go forward with it. So we kind of put it on the back burner. Hopefully 2 years from now, we can actually revisit this when it comes back to a funding year. But it basically just goes through why computer science in Minnesota, what XRP is, how it's financed, the benefits of it. And again, we have it for both DFL and GOP. So it's a case that we made targeted documents for everything we do. We make targeted documents too. We make targeted documents for emails to businesses, to everything. And this is very much a case that you can do something similar to businesses for your sponsorships, etc. Again, it's that targeted information that you're trying to create. And honestly, over the summer, this is the perfect time to create that targeted information, so that school year rolls around, you can really start getting things going. All right. So all right, so like I said, we have the XRP specific, the industry specific, and the general robotics. And again, don't try to exclude groups in all of them. At least have some of it recognition of VEX in something, just so again, if you have that individual that their kid, grandkid, niece, nephew was on a VEX team, we don't necessarily want to shut down everything funding wise for that very nature. So it comes down to spin the bill to how it could possibly benefit them. For the XRP bill that we're looking at, it's a case that it still teaches coding. It teaches block coding. So it's something that you could very easily still say, hey, yes, XRP is a first product, but it teaches coding very similar in a cheaper manner than any of the VEX robots could. All right. There's our letter for agriculture. Basically, why mentoring is important, why agriculture in FIRST is important, benefits of agriculture, and how it can help with team growth. All right. The other thing you want to start looking at, and again, it's wild to say that you're doing all of this for a political meeting, but it's very important to make sure that you have all stakeholders involved. So one of the things is also creating targeted communications for whatever lobbying thing you're trying to do for all the stakeholders. So in Minnesota, we have High Tech Kids, we have First Upper Midwest, we have FFA, we have CSTA, the Computer Science Teachers Association, we have the CTSOs, which is the, it's basically your student technical organizations. So that's your FFA, FCCLA, et cetera. And you want to try and target as many as you can to show that how your bill can benefit them and how FIRST can benefit these ideas. So like I said, reaching out to as many in FFA and saying, okay, this is what can happen. FCCLA is really easy to get involved with, especially if you have FFL groups. Those kids are perfect leaders of the FFL groups. And then again, we do everything with computer science. So target that information towards computer science teacher organizations, along with basically any other stakeholder groups that you may be able to think of. Oh, sorry. All right. So I had program delivery organization in here. Again, this was for World's presentation. And some of that was when I was talking with the XRP bill with High Tech Kids, it really kind of worried them. They saw it as a threat to FTC. And it took quite a bit of explaining to do to get them on board as to how it can benefit them. And so much of what we need to do in Minnesota is actually trying to figure out how to bridge that gap between High Tech Kids, FTC, and FRC teams. Now, I know we have a lot of teams that have FRC and FTC, so it shouldn't be that difficult, but yet we need to figure out a way to work together so that no one feels like they're being left out of the communication. And it really needs to start getting back to teams to lead this. So yes, I'm doing this presentation, but hopefully in the future, September, October, we can have, an advocacy council and actually really try and figure out how to move forward to benefit us all. All right, so here is, this is my computer science letter. So basically computer science teachers. And it's one of those things that I will admit, I am not great at writing sometimes. I have much better student writers than I ever could write. And even then they get a little lazy, especially in the advent of ChatGPT and Writer and some of these other wonderful tools out there, that we do use them. I'm not going to even lie and say we don't use them. We use them for various things. But this was just our general letter for the CTSOs groups. So, we make sure we have all this specific documentation that includes all the groups, that we're not leaving anyone out, we're not excluding everybody, etc. We also looked at, businesses, because you need to get industry support for any bill you may have. And it's very much a case that whatever bill it is, you want to have industry support, you want to have teacher organization supports, you want to have the principal and superintendent organizations on board with it. You want as many T's crossed, I's dotted as you possibly can, just for the sake that you want to have someone come back and go, well, have you thought about this? Oh, we haven't thought about that. Now we have to actually spend 2 months to try and fix this issue. So the ultimate goal is to communicate with as many people in front ahead of time as you can, so that then down the road, when you actually get to the point where you start getting the bills passed and looking at the bills and how to move forward with the bills, it makes it a little easier. This was, again, one of our DigiKey XRP bills. And it's kind of wild with some of these things. If you're looking for industry support, one of the things you can do, and I know we did this for Stratasys, I think it was, and maybe a couple other companies. We actually bought stock in the company, and just as little amount of stock as you possibly can. But if you get stock within the company, you can actually then have access to more personnel records. And you can have access to the various press pools and things like that you can actually start contacting through. The other way to find out who you want to talk to is through LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I know, is kind of one of those, if you're not familiar with LinkedIn, it's basically where all business professionals have their resume and get a million different job offers a day if they have stuff posted. But it's one way to find people. I kind of like the stock option. It was slightly more entertaining than just trying to go, and easier than trying to go through LinkedIn. All right, so a couple things with the letters that we send out to political leaders is, don't focus on just one robotics organization. You want to keep it, as much, I hate to say first of X repeatedly, you want to keep it open to both to not shut anybody down. The other thing is, why are we doing this? What's the good thing about it? Now, I did put be non-political in nature here. Again, that very much came as a directive from First HQ, that we were supposed to be very, especially in today's climate, be very careful on the political slant you take things. And that is just a good piece of advice. Something that would not necessarily have been needed last year at this time, to say, hey, watch what you're saying in your political slant. But it is good advice. Make sure you read the room, understand what your legislature is about, the business is about, whoever it is about that you're talking to, so that okay, is this a good path to follow, or is it not a good path to follow with the verbiage in your notes? Does anybody have any questions at this point? I'm okay. Oh, yeah, Scott.
Okay, so maybe I need to go back and level set a little bit here. You keep saying in your bill.
Sorry.
Are you, so maybe we need to step back a bit. Are you looking for giving advice and asking for help in a bill that you're trying to put together for all of Minnesota, or?
Not yet. No,
okay.
Sorry. I keep referring to it because I'm so used to having, I think we had 2 bills that were possibly up for things this year. We had one with the high-tech kids and STEM ecosystem bill, and then we had our XRP bill. No, at this point right now, every bill is pretty much either dead in the water or being voted on. So it's a case that next year is a year where it's not a budgetary year, it's a policy year. So it's trying to think about what policies we can have in place to make FIRST robotics more impactful in Minnesota, is what next year would be. And then the following year is another budget bill. So it comes into, that's the year that you figure out your money asks. And then this coming year, though, it's very much a case of, okay, what can we do? And at this point, realistically, I don't know if there's any need to rush a bill through. Especially this summer, you're not going to make it anywhere. The main goal this summer is to try and create documents, your general team document for your legislature, and your industry specific in your area. So that then next school year, hopefully we can reconvene and figure out some good policies to enact that can hopefully benefit not only FRC teams, but FTC teams. One of the things could be, is there a way that we could enact robotics for credit? something along those lines after school. Is there a way that you could do open up the CTSO programs to allow FIRST to be one of them? Is there something with computer science? Now, I know we've made the push for computer science the past couple years. Emailing all legislative representatives about it and why it would be a good thing. And that's even something easy any team could do. Like, hey, we need to actually start bolstering computer science within Minnesota. What are ways we can do this? How can we, we should have, I don't know if they have set standards yet, but I know they're talking set standards for Minnesota. But there's all sorts of different options. And if there's anybody that wants to reach out, by all means, feel free to reach out, say, hey, that FRC8298@gmail.com is a perfect one to actually reach out at, to say, this would be something we'd like to pursue, or how can we pursue this further? But at this juncture, all bills are either dead in the water for the year, or they're wrapped up in an omnibus bill for budget funding. I think that the only one that is wrapped in an omnibus bill at this point maybe is the STEM ecosystem bill. Otherwise, I think everything else is pretty much done. So every year you pretty much start scratch.
Okay, so when you say these are the letters that you should be considered and put together, this is how you should do it. What are we doing that for? Are we doing that for because our team wants to push a bill through
in the future
legislature for something that our team is interested in? Or is this something where we're trying to do a bill for all of Minnesota and teams are binding together to?
I'm going to say that it ultimately is, you're going to have an easier time. You're going to have an easier time if we can have more teams try and push for the bill. And I think this is safe to say for those that have tried to do it individually as an individual team, it's very difficult to get all the people you need on board. We had a heck of a time with some political leaders, even getting them to, if you're not in their area, they will not necessarily talk to you. So, it's one of those things that if a team wants to just go on their own and have everything and just do it, more power to you. It will not be easy. The ultimate goal for most of these documents right now to create is just kind of your intro to your legislature and trying to sell your legislature on why FIRST is important. It's a case that right now if you have a bill or an idea of a bill, go for it, knock yourself out. But realistically, most of the time right now, my thought process was that if we can get teams communicating with their legislatures over the summer, get them into their shop space, get them into see what the robotics world is, drive a robot, have them see all the skills that you guys, the kids are learning. Have them look at the business plan from the teams. We do a lot of awesome stuff that people don't know about across the board. So realistically, right now, the goal is to market your team to your senator and representative at the state level. That's the ultimate goal. And then when they reconvene in September, October, somewhere in there, and schools start kicking in place, and we can start thinking about what bills would benefit everybody. It's a case, if you still have a bill, I'm all for the sacrificial bill, where you're not going to make it anywhere, but you still get in front of legislatures and talk to them and put a positive spin on what FIRST is. Go for it. But if there's a great bill out there, a great thing that we could do to benefit all Minnesota, it'd be fantastic if we could actually then get 10, 20 teams, 30 teams, 50 teams, whatever, across the board to really work together and hone in on it, to try and figure out the best way to move forward. I know that in the southern part of the state, we have Bill Weber is our senator, and he is the GOP. What is he? I think he's the whip now. But it's very much a case that it was very easiest for us to talk to him. We had a heck of a time trying to get a hold of Liz Lee from the St. Paul area. We couldn't make it anywhere with her. We basically got blown off repeatedly. So initially, all these documents would be for your team specific to try and introduce why robotics is good, what it is, how it benefits the state of Minnesota as a whole without any ask. There is no ask at this juncture for the most part, because unless you have an ask, we don't have an ask. Now, I will get through, like I said, I'm going to show you one example here, kind of roughly non-political at all, but just something that I've been screwing around with the past 4 years trying to make some headway on that I haven't, but it's still very much in the same line. Does that answer your question, Scott?
I think the important thing that you highlighted there was there isn't an ask. So this is a get to know you,
Yep.
get to know us.
Yep.
Start building a relationship that
Yes.
you can bank for the
Later.
future when there is a budget year and there
Yep.
is something that can impact a broader swath, and it's not focused on individual teams.
Correct.
Generally, you want to be doing something in your region or statewide. And so you start now by building relationships. Is that?
And it's
a
all
good
about
summary?
relationships, because relationships don't happen overnight. It takes months, years, even to get somewhere with some of them. So the sooner you start building this relationship with your political leader, the easier it's going to be 2 years down the road, next year. I know for us, it took us, we probably really took 3 years before we had a good relationship with Bill Weber. It probably took 2 years before we had a decent relationship with Joe Schumacher, our representative. So it's a time thing, and it's a perseverance thing. So you need to find that kid on your team that is good with setting up calendar reminders, because we do all this documentation stuff is, hey, this is why it's important. This is what's good about robotics. But then the next step is the follow-up communication and the continual communication. So I had a kid that set up basically every month, he had a certain day where he'd send an email, and he scheduled it out. He said, okay, on the 20th, I'm going to send an email to Bill Weber. On the 23rd, I'm going to send it to Klobuchar. And like, he might have done it every 2 months, every month. It kind of depends on how big the ask was and what we were trying to get to. And it's really that building of relationships that is so important with so many of these things, not only with your legislatures, but also your businesses. It's building the constant relationship and communications, and that is really helpful for that. Any other questions? All right. Again, CTE is safe educational thing. Workforce preparation is great. Try to remain non-political-ish. Job creation is also great. Developing advancing technologies, phenomenal. All right. No, I went too far. Sorry. All right. The other thing to do is research your legislative body. So once you actually have a bill that you care about, and even then, now, as you're starting to get to know your political leaders, it's a good idea to do research as to what committees they're on, what bills in the past they believe in, and really start honing in on what their career in Congress or House has been, so you know how to talk to them. So do some research as to what they care about. So I honestly don't know who Mr. Parker is. Oh, Coleman. Okay, so Mr. Parker must have been one of the representatives for Senator Coleman. I kind of had to edit this a little bit from what we sent out. But it's a case that we send out. This is a very generic letter, generic ask. You'd probably want to do more of a generic get to know our team type thing than the ask, because there is no ask right now, at least not yet. But yeah. So, and like I said, we'll go through one of those in a second, actually making one. Other thing is, if you get your principals, school board superintendents out on board, talk to them, get them in your shop, get them to see what you're doing. Same thing with athletic directors. Get them in your shop, talk to them so they can see everything that you do and all the skills that we teach within FIRST. We don't need education extensions. All right. One other thing is basically divide communication if possible. So it's not just one person doing it. Also, try and have a generic email for your advocacy or sponsorships or anything if possible. That way it lives with the team and not the individual. And when Amy Klobuchar sees an email from FRC 2847 Advocacy, she'll know basically the history that's with everything. If you're going in person, make sure you take something with you. FRC bots are a bear to lug around. I'm not going to deny that. But think about taking an XRP bot or an FTC bot just to explain and demo. Take your engineering notebooks, take your impact folders, whatever you have, just to kind of explain everything that actually is involved with robotics. All righty. So we'll come back to that in a second. So one of the things that I was going to show you here, and I don't know if anybody watched last week tonight, but a couple weeks ago he had a thing on minor league baseball and how minor league baseball teams are absurd and there's all this stuff with them, and it's just a fun time. And I'll admit that I've been trying to hit John Oliver up for the past couple weeks, years, honestly, to try and get to sponsor, my robotics team. I'm not a proud person, and I find it slightly amusing. So when he said this, my first thought was, oh, hey, he's trying to get, take over a minor league baseball team. Be a lot cheaper for him to just pay, for a FIRST robotics team to name after him and just run with whatever branding he wants with it. So what I did was I went to his website. I looked at his general overview of what, his show is. I took that. I then threw it into ChatGPT with everything there, why he should care about it. And then I threw that all into a Google Doc so I wouldn't lose it. And then I threw it into my friend Ryder. And Ryder, I had him write an email for me. So I'm going to have him write the email for me. Oh, I've limited my exhausted credits. Okay, hold on. Well, that's all right. We'll just go back to my other one that I actually made. Downside of, exhausting all credits. So anyway, I had it write a email for me. Now, if you have somebody that is a phenomenal writer, have them write the email, have them run it through Grammarly or things like that, but have them, just go through it and see what there is. But I took what John Oliver's mission statement was, and the fact that he cares about baseball, minor league baseball, and the absurdity of minor league baseball, and I try to throw in there basically why he should care about FIRST robotics. Now, I'm going to send this off, and my other co-mentor probably won't be happy the fact that I, am trying to rebrand our team with John Oliver, and I'm sure John Oliver will ignore this entirely, but it's very much a case that you go through, you do your research, you get an idea, you create your documents, you send it off, and you see where it lands. And who knows? Again, more than likely, nothing's going to happen with this one, but something might. I will tell you that probably as far as emails go, over the past 4 years, I think we've sent out, something like 4,000 emails to politicians, not only in Minnesota, but South Dakota, Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, Illinois, Wisconsin, Nebraska. Yeah, for computer science. We did a lot for computer science, trying to bolster computer science. You'll notice distinct trends within political parties as far as communication goes and what communication you get and don't get. And it's a case that we never really, our initial computer science round of emails, we weren't really specific as far as political party. We were looking more or less at how we just thought, oh, naively, everyone's going to be fine for computer science education. There's nothing wrong with computer science education. Everyone likes computer science. It's fun. And it became very evident as we were proceeding through that we needed to be more conscientious in our verbiage to political parties and why certain things are better for one party versus another party. If you have the kids that really love politics, get them to start reading Politico. Have them start reading different trade or political magazines. Again, you're going to get rejected a ridiculous amount of time. And it gets frustrating. But all in all, it's amazing what I've seen kids do advocacy-wise. Okay, I rambled on for about 45 minutes there. Hopefully, I answered questions, and I know I went very fast, and I'm sorry about this. We're hoping to actually get September, October, more detailed planning and advocacy, structured meeting on how to do things. It's really just, I was hoping for this meeting and this roundtable to start the conversation with their political leaders. Start working on how are you going to sell your team in the political realm to whoever your legislature is, because ultimately that's what you're doing, is selling your team to whoever that political legislature may be. Questions? Sorry, go for it.
Aaron, I'm thinking ahead here. So let's say that we get a meeting, we get a politician, a state representative or senator into our shop.
Yes.
And we work to build that relationship. I feel like there needs to be a reason. I feel like there, because I feel like the question is going to be, what's going to help you the most? Where's your need, right? And I feel like that needs to be prepared ahead of time.
And that's perfectly valid. So as far as need goes, it's so tricky right now in Minnesota, because the thing that would probably benefit more teams more than anything else would be hubs. If we could have more hubs in outstate areas, practice hubs, things like that. The issue is funding. So probably the easiest and safest ask at this point, if you feel like you need to have an ask, would be the whole, if we could remove and honestly, your politician probably isn't going to have any idea about what the barriers are on this statement. But if there's a way to remove barriers for CTSOs, so basically can first become a CTSO within Minnesota, and that'd be a policy thing that basically they have to enact something in order to have that happen. Honestly, that's one of the reasons why some of the people were at Champs was to try and get it so first could be a CTSO. Some of the political leaders, if you know who was at Champs for political leaders, that's one of the reasons why they were probably there. Another ask you could do would be, again, it's so weird right now politically. We don't know quite where things stand with everything. Another ask would be, could they do something with the ESSA Title IV Part A funding, which is a block grant funding that schools get. In Minnesota, if it's over, I want to say it's 12,000. I haven't looked up lately what it is. If it's over 12,000, they have to report funding, how it's spent. If it's under 12,000, they don't. And it was written, the grant itself, the verbiage of the bill, and this is federal money coming down, was written so that first teams can actually have access to funding through this for after school programs. Now, I think pretty much no school I know of is actually getting any ESSA Title IV Part A money. But if ask would be, hey, could we make it so that 10% of ESSA Title IV Part A money goes to after school STEM education or something like that across the board. So at this juncture, it's whatever, and I'll throw in that documents folder that I had the link for at the front. I'll throw in there various suggestions of policies you can ask for. It's one of those, we don't really have a clear-cut defined message yet in Minnesota. And pretty much High Tech Kids has managed to get FTC kind of corralled in the past year for unified messaging. And FRC doesn't necessarily have it. And I understand why, your politicians probably would ask it. I would, if nothing else, just say, for the politicians, at least initially, come and see what you guys have been working for funding of schools. Thank you for the Deeds Act. You can even pull them in for that because we're still, I think we're about out of money for Deeds Act, but we still had it this year, some of us. So bring them in and say, hey, I just want to show you what the Deeds Act fund that you passed in 2023, 24, somewhere in there, what it was going to and all the great things we learned from it. So it could even be so simple as using it as a thank you to come and see what great things we've learned and gained from a bill that I don't think anyone really loved.
See, I think this is really interesting because I know that you guys are in the rural or outstate part, not metro. I don't know how you prefer to be classified or what is good terminology here. But I recently had a conversation with our district folks, and we were talking about space. Everybody wants to talk about space, right? Yep. We all have space issues. And their question to me was saying, hey, give me something. Who around us is doing a really good job with the robotics team that'll help us to see what these folks are doing? And I said, there isn't anybody around us. The metro teams are held together by volunteers that are working out of closets. If you want to see how schools are supporting teams, what I will say the better way, I don't even want to say the right way, that's not in the metro. That's out state. The metro, we don't have shop classes anymore. Very few schools have shop classes anymore. And so, again, this is a generalization and it doesn't hold true for everybody. But when I look outstate, the shop teachers, the tech ed teachers, they're the ones that are paid coaches. A lot of these outstate rural schools have multiple paid coaches. A lot of inner city schools don't have any paid coaches. And so it's really interesting to me. Like, this is what the Deeds Act did. I see that happening, but the teams that I see having impact based on the Deeds Act are teams in outstate Minnesota. They're the ones that have been benefiting because the inner city schools, we can't, honestly, I really struggle with saying we can't get support because KnightKrawler, we have a dedicated place to put our stuff.
Yeah.
Some teams don't even have that. We get some of our transportation covered. Some teams get absolutely nothing.
Yep.
And so we do get some support from our school. But I still struggle to be recognized as an actual MSHSL activity within our school district. And so to not even be recognized as an actual MSHSL activity, that's a fight that other schools aren't even needing to have because they have paid coaches or multiple paid coaches. They have dedicated space. They see robotics as part of their building technical skill in outstate Minnesota type of deal. So I think the conversation is so very different for so many different teams. And I think you alluded to that, right?
Yes.
You alluded to that.
Oh, very much so.
That it's hard to come up with one cohesive thing because all of us are fighting very different battles.
Yes.
Because some schools don't even think robotics is they think it's math team or they think it's chess club. They don't see it as an actual activity where you're learning life skills or you're competing under a state tournament banner type of deal, where other schools have dedicated space, dedicated teachers that are bringing curriculum into class that's related to robotics and pulling robotics into the schools. So it's kind of the life and breadth of that. What did you call it? CTE curriculum. Yep. So I think it's just so different in so many ways.
And I will say, having been at a school that was not supportive at all, realistically, to a school that is more supportive, it is a world of difference. It is a huge difference. And it is tough to, I don't think anyone really benefited. Well, I don't know who benefited from the Deeds Act, honestly. Like, I think, we got the St. Cloud State money, whatever that was, the $3,000 from St. Cloud State. And that was it. So it's the Deeds money. And that's the problem with so much with funding, is that there's not enough funding to go around. So it comes down to, how can we take, like I said, the ESSA Title IV Part A money. And I know that's a battle. I brought that up with Green Machine a couple of years ago when we first started this whole, advocacy thing. And I was pretty much laughed at. They're like, yeah, you're not making anywhere with that. I'm hoping that eventually, that is probably a throwaway idea, realistically. But it would be nice to try and figure out a way for money that in theory is going to the schools to get, that has been earmarked for this, to actually get a piece of it. Instead of just having going to the general fund or whatever it may be. And it's not going to be anywhere near enough to cover anyone's expenses in FRC. What it might do is cover expenses for an FTC team easily enough. So it's figuring out how to pick your political battles that, will benefit you in some way, shape, or form, but it's not going to solve all your ills. As much as I hate to say it, like, I would love to find a way for every FRC program to just have dedicated shop space, and to just literally make it a, this is a CTE, the career and technical education thing. But again, shops, electives, they're all going away from schools as it is, due to funding cuts. And that might be even something that you just, talk about funding education in general. How can we, make sure that we don't have huge budgetary cuts to schools? And as your initial ask, any of those things are fine, really. It could be, because right now we're not trying to, I like the idea of thanking them, because I know we did that for a good chunk of time. Like, oh, thank you for the Deeds Act. Thank you for the Deeds Act. Thank you for the Deeds Act. I never said that I hated the Deeds Act, but, I always thank them for it. Like, thank you for your $3,000 that I may or may not see. It still was the thought of thanking them for at least thinking of us a little bit, and trying to stay on that radar. So when we do have our big ask, whatever it may be, then we can actually get there. I will say that I don't think anybody that's trying to get money, like, directly to FRC teams, from the couple meetings I sat in on this legislative session, they're rolling back some rules and procedures, and they're very gun shy over how money is going out to organizations. So realistically, if we can come up with a good policy thing in September, October, policy is probably our best bet at this point over funding. Funding is going to be tricky for the foreseeable future, of any funding, of any bill. And like I said, sitting in on some of the legislative work, it was very much a case of, how are we going to make sure that the people are getting it that need it, and what's your overhead costs, and how is that cutting into this money? And you could see that it was very much a case from the the food program, a couple that there was the lawsuits about, and the funding issues. You can tell very much that most political leaders at this point are very weary on how they're doling out money because of that. So it's the policy thing is going to be an easier sell if we can figure out what the policy thing is. And that's why, I ran through the superintendent board, the principal board, all of that, because when we actually come up with a policy that could benefit first teams in Minnesota, we need to make sure that everyone's on board across every possible group, or as many as possible. They started rolling back. Oh shoot, what was it? There was something else policy wise that they started to say that no, it was too much burden on the schools, and they're starting to move it back the needle the other direction. I don't remember what bill that was, but yeah. So it's very much making sure that everyone involved, all the stakeholders involved, know truly what is at stake, and trying to make it as easy as possible to implement whatever the policy may be.
Aaron, have you ever, I know that you've talked about getting business support, but you're talking about getting business support for a statewide initiative.
Yeah.
Have you ever pursued something more local where you're dealing with the city or the county to try to achieve something that doesn't involve the state at all?
Yes.
Can you discuss maybe how that approach might be different to work directly within your community? It's
a lot easier, honestly. It's a lot easier. It's ridiculous. It's significantly easier. I haven't done much in Fairmont. In Laverne, it was actually trying to get dedicated space. So the armory, they built a new armory in Laverne. So the old armory is sitting vacant. And so we actually wrote a plan on how to turn the armory into a 21st century learning center. And it's a case that, we went through, we met with the mayor, the city council, regular meetings, city council members, local businesses, pretty much anybody locally at the state and county level, we had meetings with. That was very different conversation, and all conversations are different. If you're talking at the federal level, the conversation that you're having at the federal level is very different than the state level than the local level. It's very easy at the local level to go, okay, this is actually how it benefits your town. It benefits it by, if we have this, so again, it was this armory for the 21st century learning center. And we knew we couldn't go through the traditional ESSA Title IV Part B money to do that. So we were looking at outside sources of funding and fundraising for it. So it was, okay, what does this bring to the community, and how does this benefit the community, and how does this get people to move to our area? It's a very different conversation than talking to the aides of Amy Klobuchar, John Thune, and saying, well, if you can make sure you get Perkins funding, keep at the same level, or the CHIPS Act funding at the same level, so that we can have increased robotics, career and technical education courses, versus this is how we can grow our community, is with our program. So if we have a great program and we can market our program, then we can actually get people to move to our community and take jobs and grow our community. And it's really taking that community growth approach and actually getting people to say that, oh, hey, we just won state champions. We're a killer robotics team. Come, move to our school to be part of the robotics team. You're going to learn all sorts of great things here. It's a different marketing technique for that versus the political realm. And honestly, local is so much easier. It just is. Because you can easily call up your mayor, email your mayor, not easily, but it's a lot easier to get to the mayor than probably your representative or senator. And they're also in town more than your representative and senator. Now, granted, in the cities, a little different, but for us, definitely true. It's a lot easier to get a hold of the mayor than the representatives and senators. Does that make sense? Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, I was just going to throw in there. I mean, really, pretty much kind of echoing what Aaron was saying about both your communities and your schools. Really trying to echo that promoting this program will make people choose your community. I think I just saw a stat, at least in our area, in the Fairmont area. I want to say it was around a quarter of the people who work in town don't live in town. And so rather than what's easier than like bringing in new business is convincing people to move to your town who work there. And so this is one way you can do that. So promoting, saying, hey, we've got this great robotics program. Maybe you have a technical or a skilled job. You've been commuting 20, 30 minutes. Hey, get your kid in this school district. And just, and even out here kind of in rural, people have choices about where they send their where they send their kids for school. As far as, I'm in a small town in between two districts, which one do I go? And really using this as a wedge or a way to say, hey, promote this robotics program, give us a dedicated space, dedicated shop, whatever it is, promote it, and maybe your enrollment will increase. And when cities start looking at people moving to your town or schools look at enrollment increases, all of a sudden the money's flowing, right? And obviously there's burdens with more people too, but ultimately a lot of these communities are going to see that growth as a positive. And obviously we're just one tiny part of making an enrollment of a school grow or a community, but also we're not asking for, in the grand scheme of the budgets of things, we're not asking for a lot either. So that's just kind of my, I don't know,
And it's
my
weird.
limited experience anyway.
Yeah, I will say that I had last school year, I had 4 families move to Laverne just for a robotics team. And when schools start looking at enrollments and enrollments are down, anything that should bring a family to the area should be beneficial. Now, does it always work out? No. Budget cuts still happen. Things still get lost in the shuffle. But it's one of those things that it's something to look at and go, listen, if we got, these 3 families to move here to be part of this robotics team, move to my community for part of this robotics team, it is really a good thing. And it's weird to say that it happens, but it happens probably more than what we think it does. It definitely happens with other activities. I'm sure it happens with, robotics too. Any other questions? Hopefully I didn't bore you too much, and hopefully it's one of those things that the downside of doing this for 4 years and living in the political realm for 4 years is I have a tendency to forget about, all the wonderful things that got us to this point, all the little steps. But again, it's very much, you want to start working on building that relationship. It's all about relationships with your sponsors, with the political leaders, your mayor, your city council, your school board. The more people you can talk to about robotics and promote robotics and your love of robotics, the better off you're going to be ultimately in the long run. And so that then when it gets to the ask, whatever the ask may be, it's going to be an easier sell. And honestly, if you're still looking for that, well, what's our thing going to be? Even if you didn't benefit from it at all, which honestly, most Minnesota teams didn't benefit from the Deeds Act, use the Deeds Act. Just come in, thank them for it. Hey, I just want to show you everything that you got for the Deeds Act. Thing is, it bought, a swerve drive, whoop-de-doo. It really, the money from the Deeds Act, no one really reaped huge benefits from it, at least initially, because so much of it went to the internships. If you had internships, great. Most rural, I don't think many rural, I don't know how many teams actually benefited from the internship program, but still, it's something to look at. Any other questions?
Aaron, how are you keeping track of are you using a CRM system, a contact management system? How are you tracking
how we do it? Google spreadsheets.
Okay.
So basically we had a Google spreadsheet with all our leaders in it. Our initial email, did we get a response? Follow-up email dates, response, et cetera, and who sent it. So we just use the Google Sheets just to make it easier, because most high school kids have access at their schools through the Google suite and they use it. So that's what we did. I'm sure there's an easier, more efficient way to do it, but that's what we've always did, is just gone that route, just to keep that documentation in order. The other thing that we always did was we printed off or we saved all emails as a PDF and put them in a folder specifically, and then tied the response image, the PDF, to the Google Sheet, so that then we could say, oh, wait, so-and-so contacted us on this date about this. Okay, we can access it a little easier then. And, some of the year's spreadsheets were much more detailed than others. It kind of depends on what we were looking at for an ask, whatever our ask may be. I know our computer science one, that spreadsheet was kind of terrible because as we got very hostile responses from certain individuals, we just basically, we flagged it and said, nope, not going to talk to that individual anymore. It's not okay to respond to a high school student that way. So we just basically, we flagged them that we were not going to communicate anymore with them. And we moved on to other people. Yeah, I wish I had a better way. I will say the students I've had in charge of it have been more organized than I've ever been with communication, which helps a lot. Because honestly, I never thought to set schedules for sponsorship emails or anything until they were talking about, oh, well, if I have my set schedule for when I'm communicating with this political leader, I know I do it. I know my other team is doing it. It just made it a lot easier to keep track of who was doing what.
And how many students, I know that this likely fluctuates year to year, but what does that look like in terms of a group of students, a team of students that are making these?
It does fluctuate year to year. So generally speaking, I had 2 to 3 in charge of it. And then I had my fluff people that you would not consider fluff people, generally speaking, but that was my coders, my builders, my engineers, things like that. My non-political savvy people, they would be in talking to them then. So I was teamed up a political savvy person and a, roboticsy person. And if it's the same person, phenomenal. I just never had the two sides meet, honestly. So I always buddy them up for safety. So that then, the story of, and generally speaking, my political people, my business people were very similar. There was an awful lot of overlap with them. So they could talk about the political side and the business side. They'd have the engineering coder person there to talk about that side and how it benefited them and which direction they would go. But generally speaking, I normally had 3 to 4 that would work on the communication. If that, some years it was 1. We figured out how to mass email through Google Gmail. And we just basically created, did mass emails. So it really depends on what your team structure is at this point. If you want to do a mail merges are easy. It's less specific. But if it's a more general thing you're looking for, like, oh yeah, Minnesota is now 48th in computer science. What can we do to make it better? We're up from 51. So, we take that as a win. But that's an easy thing just to mass email out everybody and say, oh, hey, here you go. This is why it would benefit the Republicans, Democrats, whatever, to increase computer science. So it kind of depends on if you want to have a throwaway conversation or if you want to have a more meaningful, guided one.
Do you have any success stories to share from the work that you've been doing over these? How many years did you say you've been doing these
4.
emails? 4. So have you found success yet, or is it still too early?
Oh no, we have.
So what kind? Can you share any stories with us?
I know our initial, like the computer science standards in Minnesota. We had people, that was our first thing that we really pushed for. That was before really it was even most legislatures, and this was 2019, we pretty much started that right away. Most legislatures at the time, really, it wasn't on their radar that we were so bad in computer science. So I would say that, the fact that we actually managed to get standards standards are working on being in place, and that is finally progressing within Minnesota. I would like to say we had a part in that. I don't know if we did or not, but I know that, out of our thousands of emails, we did get good response to that. I would say the XRP thing, if it wasn't a split House or Congress this year, we probably actually could have gotten XRP passed this year. If it wasn't a split, the split pretty much killed it on top of the federal funding cuts that have been happening, and then the budget deficit. We pretty much had most political leaders on board with it. We had a possibility, and we actually had the bill written even for it. And we had sponsors and co-sponsors across the aisle, which is wild to say. We actually managed to get a Republican and Democrat to sign on to the bill to think it was a good idea. Ultimately, we put a pin in that one because when both the Republican and Democrat said that there was no way there was any money going to be involved in this to get $4.5 million for this, we realized that we had to rethink it and how to approach it. So I'd like to say that that was a quasi success story, even though not quite there. The easiest, it's really hard to do a bill individually. I know we went up and did a lot of advocacy work for the deeds bill, even though, again, I don't think anyone was happy with the deeds bill. I know we did a lot of advocacy for that. I know we've done stuff at the federal level for ESSA, Perkins and CHIPS. Again, our big win there was not to have the funding cut when we've done it. Now, I'm guessing this year it will be cut somewhat. Yeah.
And when you were talking about the XRP and you say we, who is we?
Okay. So that was my team members. It was I very seldom actually interact with any of the political leaders. I do not like it. Whenever I put a suit and I walk around any Capitol, it doesn't matter the Capitol. Whenever I put a suit on and walk around the Capitol, they either think I'm an old politician that is, bitter and jaded, or an old lobbyist that's bitter and jaded. So I try to stay out of it as much as possible and let the kids do it. So
to be clear here, so the megahertz Mighty Morphin Banana Slugs had a bill that almost different circumstances, one team almost had a bill go through the legislature.
Yes. Yeah, we did. And it is doable to do it. It very much is. I will say that it's one of the things that once you have, any team can actually try and get the bill and go for it. Like even right now, I know we worked on the, with FTC, the STEM ecosystem bill with Emily Said, that's helping funding for high-tech kids and a whole bunch of other organizations. And, we recorded testimony to be played for the Senate and Representatives hearings, and we met with them. To actually write a bill itself is ridiculously difficult because you need to find the signer, the co-signer of it, and you need to do a ridiculous amount of legwork to actually get anywhere with it. The easier approach is to try and come up with the whole idea of a consortium to actually get it done. As far as teams go, and then you just all sign off and say, yep, we all had a part in it. That's pretty much what happened with the high-tech kids bill this year. And it's a case that we kind of backburnered the XRP bill and hoping to try and get the high-tech kids bill across the line. We didn't think there would be enough political will to get two through. And we're probably right on that because I don't know if there was even enough political will to get one through. So it is fully doable to have one team do it. It just is Well, and even when I say that it's doable, we still reached out to MinuteBots, the MinuteBots guys, because they had some political contacts that we didn't. So even though, yes, one team did most of the work, we still reached out to other teams to try and get political capital that we could not gain ourselves. And it was very selective on who we contacted for it. It was basically, we looked at which political committees would be best served by our actions, and we reached out to the teams that were in that area. Now, I'm hoping that in the future, if we take a more unified approach, it'll be easier to do that instead of trying to figure out, what contact has, again, Liz Lee was like our nemesis, I feel like, because we could never get a hold of her. We tried. But it's a case that if we can build that up, it makes it a lot easier. Because generally speaking, if you're not in the politician's district, you get ignored. You get ignored a lot. So it's doable, but the amount of work that has to be done to get a bill passed individually or even on the floor is just ridiculously hard. So if we can manage to either small groups of teams figuring out their bills and how to make it work, larger groups, it's all good. But it's actually trying to get to a more universal approach to things.
Well, I think we lost Ephemia. She had her hand up, but
she did. I'm sorry I missed her.
Yeah, I kind of stepped on her. She put her hand up just as I was asking my question. I should have paused and let her back in. All right.
If she has a question, have her shoot me an email. I'll answer it.
No problem. I can definitely do that. Anybody have anything else? We're getting pretty close on time, so I'm happy to end it here. All right. Then let's give Aaron a round of applause. Thank you, Aaron, for bringing this information to us. So much of this was new to me. A lot of this stuff is completely outside of my experience and wheelhouse and a realm of knowledge completely. So it's very interesting to hear this perspective. And I look forward to hearing in the fall. You said that you're hoping to revisit this in the fall. So
yeah,
people start thinking this summer about how to make contacts with their local representatives and their senators and business leaders in preparation for maybe some additional policy stuff that you or a group of people may be leading starting in the fall again.
And I know that Nicole has talked about doing something more FRC advocacy. High Tech Kids wants to. I'm hoping that we can really get it more unified across the board. I know it doesn't necessarily behoove any team individually by doing that, but if we can at least make the needle move for the majority of teams, it'll benefit us all.
Absolutely. Yep. I agree. All right. So once again, thank you very much. Coming up on the roundtable, we have 2 left before we're going to shut down for the summer, and then we'll resume probably early October, right around mini trials. Right around the time mini trials gets launched is usually the beginning of October. We'll probably resume. We've got 2 sessions left. They're both get to know. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Here we go. Next week, we have a session on get to know Ultraviolet 2129. And the following week, our final one of the year will be get to know Binary Battalion 7028. So great way to close out the season. If anyone's on here and they're like, darn it, we missed our opportunity to have get to know our team, I am planning to put up next fall's schedule, hopefully before June 1st. So I know that's creeping up on me here. I got to get my butt in gear and get that done. We're going to be blocking off several sessions next year for presenters that myself and another individual working on bringing in to talk about for specific things, kind of more kind of official training, I guess I would say, which is great because we always have trouble finding things to chat about in the fall. So we're going to try to get the schedule up sooner so that people who want to give a presentation or want to host a talk next year can get on the schedule right away. All right. Thank you, everyone. And I will see you next week for Get to Know Ultraviolet. Have a good one.